Hello and welcome to Nirmabam, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Nadia. We have with us Saurabh Mittal, CFO at S. Chand Group, joining in. Saurabh, good afternoon and a very warm welcome to the show. My first question coming to you over here is, how are you dealing with this pandemic that's actually, uh, you know, not only hit any particular country as a whole, I mean, the entire globe has been hit by it right now. A lot of changes that are coming up as well on the back of coronavirus. How are you dealing with it?
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for having me. Uh, yes, I mean, this is unprecedented. None of us have seen anything like this. And to be honest, all of us are having to look back and try and figure out uh, what the impacts of this is going to be in the long run. Uh, Having said that, it's been about 3 months. The scenario is getting better over the last month and a half for all of us. And I mean, people are having to live with it. People are being careful, and eventually, I feel over the longer period of time, we will figure out a way to go past this. So I'm pretty optimistic on coming back to normal post that. So I mean, things are changing every day. I mean, from the initial days when we were completely at home, only working from home, we've also transitioned to coming to office maybe thrice a week with half the staff. I mean, having our warehouses working at to a level of capacity, our plants working to almost 70% capacity. So things are limping back to normal. People are bookshops are opening for us. So I think across all in other industries, what I can also see is that people are getting back to work, and eventually we all have to live with it.
Absolutely. I think all of us have to live with it and learn to take care of ourselves. So if you could just help me understand with regards to S Chand as well, the kind of impact that we've seen, has affected, industries across. So there's no sector which has actually been left untouched. Now, what have been the significant challenges that publishing, houses have actually faced?
Uh, so in terms of publishing or education, as we would rather call it,
Mm.
uh, unfortunately, it came at a time when we were at our peak. So March, April is supposed to be Q4 is supposed to be a peak, and even in Q4, March is supposed to be the peak. And even before the lockdown, if you see schools and colleges started closing around the 10th of March itself. So the impact for us was a larger 3 weeks complete slowdown and of course complete stop in operations in terms of production and distribution. So yes, a major impact for us, both from the revenue side and collection side for the previous year. But what we feel is that most of it would flow over to H1. I wouldn't say Q1 because even Q1 started as late as 18th of May. So I mean, it's not completely back to normal things. I think so are normalizing more right now. So it'll get deferred to H1. Uh, I would not say that 100% would get deferred to H1, but yes, a large part of it would get deferred to H1.
Right. So, what's the kind of impact do you think that the first 70, 75 days of lockdown would have had on business in terms of degrowth? Because, whichever industry I'm talking to right now, everyone's of the opinion that at least we need to break even in this year, if not make profitability. That's going to be our aim. But if you have to look at education as a sector, we're not seeing a lot of loss in revenue, as you already mentioned, that there is a deferment that's happening from the first quarter probably to the second quarter. If that, or even to the second half of the year, if anything prolongs. But overall, for the year, what's the kind of degrowth that you are keeping in and ready to take up on the cards?
See, in terms of FY20, whatever has happened. I mean, there's nothing that we can change beyond that. Our numbers will be out in a week's time, so I will not be able to talk about that. But if you talk about FY21, we are very positive that whatever because there's a flow over from last year also, and things will get back to normal by the end of this year. So I don't see revenues going down as such. I don't see a negative impact on overall revenues for the year, because you see, most of our revenue is centered around Q4. So come December, January, I believe we should be looking at almost 80, 85, 90% normalcy. So impact for us would not be that large. And plus, we've also had a flow from last year to this year. So in terms of reported revenues, I don't see a major impact. In fact, I would even go one step ahead and say we would probably report positive growth from the previous year.
Okay, so that's going to be a good thing that we need to watch out for. But with this sort of overall during the lockdown, if you see in terms of where the factories were concerned, if you see in terms of the labor goes, how bad was it? I mean, at what capacity were we operational? For how many days were we on a complete shutdown?
So we were on a complete shutdown from the 22nd of March till I think the 8th of May.
Okay.
And till the 8th of May. And we've started, so it is almost almost 2 months. And even post that, the capacity buildup was slightly slow. I mean, we were permitted 18 people at the warehouse. We were permitted less than 50 people at the manufacturing operations. So I would say now we are back almost to 75, 80% in terms of printing operations. And in terms of warehouse operations, we are back to about 80, 85%.
Right. So, with this kind of disruption that we've seen, number one, yes, there has been delay in sales. Has the cash flow been impacted? And if yes, has it made situations slightly tight with regards to where liquidity goes?
Yes, in terms of our collections, of course, again, the whole cycle has got deferred by at least 60 to 90 days. Having said that, we were very fortunate that 1 year before this, we had some foresight in terms of cutting down costs tremendously as a group. We've brought in more efficiency into our operations. We've delayed certain production to, in fact, push more inventory into the market, which is existing with us. So overall impact on cash flows because of those initiatives were almost 100 plus crores for us. So come the lockdown, we were in a far better position in terms of cash flows than we were in the previous year. Even with the lower collections, my liquidity position as on date is very, very decent. We have absolutely no pressures in terms of payments, and liquidity is very, very. I mean, it's come down to quite a bit. I mean, the expenses on the expenses side, since most of the expenses are also far lower than what you would have in a normal year. I mean, there's no travel happening around. There's no promotion activity. All our workshops have gone online, which is coming at maybe 5% of the total cost that you would incur. So see, having the operation costs come down almost by, I would say, at least 50% since restarting. Yeah, good. I mean, there is no other cost that is actually happening on the ground. I mean, even your rentals have gone down in a lot of locations, and so that benefit we've got, and that has helped us in terms of improving our cash flows. We've been very, very selective in terms of customers, and we've got good customers on board right now. So liquidity concerns not really there. Our collections have been delayed, but luckily, I mean, in terms of liquidity, no real issues.
Right. So with this sort of any issues that you faced with regards to where the migrant labor goes?
Yeah, migrant labor is there a problem with the video that you're getting?
Yes.
Yes, initially we did have a migrant labor issue because what happened was that our operations in terms of production and warehousing are at the cusp of Noida and Delhi, and because of the border issues, we've had major problems initially where people are not allowed to cross border. So if our factory was in Noida, I mean in UP, people from Delhi who were staying close by were not able to come. Plus, of course, some of the migrant population did leave. But having said that, this is the time that our production would go lower in terms of in Q1 and Q2. So we would anyway have lower labor requirements as of this now. Our peak production normally happens between November to mid March. So not such a major issue in terms of
Right.
manufacturing.
But sort of the other question from here on is with regards to the migrant labor is that now that people have gone back, the idea is, how soon will we be able to get them back to start working? Because there is that fear psychosis that has already creeped in. Do you think as companies, as corporates, we will have to probably pay them higher wages to actually get them back? And if that happens, do you see an increase in terms of employee costs?
Not really. See, we've been an organization which has been there for a long period of time, 80 plus years. So we've had most of our workers are, I would say, local. I wouldn't say my migrant would be about 25, 30%, out of which I would say about 10 odd percent would have already come back. So
Mhm.
it's not a very large impact for us. And we've been able to source people locally for operations. So I don't see a major issue in terms of that. Plus, uh, so I don't see an increase in costs as such.
Right. And with this sort of a feather on the hat that we saw that coming in the month of February, because just a little before coronavirus pandemic actually broke out in India, Eschant actually launched LearnFlix. If you could just help us understand more details, because the timing has been really right for the company to get into digital education.
So the company has been investing into digital education as far as 2008, where we had launched Destination Success in partnership with an Irish group. Uh, LearnFlix we started working on LearnFlix almost a year or so back, and we launched it end of January. We've had very good response over the last 2 3 months. We've got a good amount of downloads, and the percentage of our paid users to downloads is very high because a lot of our customers are B2B customers. Schools actually adopting LearnFlix as a via media for doing online education. So we've had large adoptions, some as large as 2,000 students for a school. So having got large adoptions for LearnFlix, that's a very big advantage. And the advantage LearnFlix also has is that it's very affordable. I mean, we say that, I mean, you can subscribe to it with your pocket money also because it barely costs you 100 rupees a month. So it's as affordable as that as compared to the competitors. It's very affordable. For classes 6 to 8, it's about 1,500 rupees. For classes 9 and 10, it's about 2,500 rupees per annum. So very affordable. And it's currently six to 10 maths and science, but we plan to ramp up with the other subjects like social studies and English.
Right. Right. So with LearnFlix, sort of another of a couple of other initiatives that you already have with regards to where the digital portfolio is concerned, especially if you have to look at Milestone, which is again a smart curriculum solution. You also have LMS, which is functioning. So if you have to combine all these three initiatives from the digital space, how much of your revenues came in from the digital side of business? Because you have already entered the space, you have been investing since quite some time. So as for FY19 or 20, how much came in from digital? And in the next 2 to 3 years, how much do you envisage that would come in from the digital side of business?
So I mean, last couple of years we were at about between 7 and 10% in terms of revenue from digital. Going forward, I think it should be around 20% this year. And so it's Milestone, which is a smart curriculum, which is also available on the app, where teachers are actually teaching through the app. All the trainings to the teachers are happening through the platform, and it's got about almost a lakh and 50,000 students already using it across the country.
Mm.
Uh, in terms of other initiatives, yes, we do have an LMS, and that is something that we are really looking at deploying in schools starting from July, August. Schools and colleges, we are getting a lot of interest from higher education universities to provide digital content, and that we see is a very very large business proposition for us, and that will only grow in the next 2 years, because uh, ultimately all schools and colleges want an integrated platform which can provide more content, and the people who have more content with them will definitely have an advantage. So in terms of content, we've got a large library across school and college, and that should definitely help us deploy it across schools and colleges.
Right. So overall, if you could just help us understand, with regards to where the digital side of business go as well as publishing side of business, how are educational institutes adopting the digital perspective? Because what's happening is, as a trend, we do see, ICSE, CBSE, or even the IB boards that are pretty much open with regards to where IB's, digital education goes. But if you have to look at the SSE side of business, which is the state board, that's something which has been left far behind right now. Do you think there is something where education houses are doing so that no one's left behind?
Yeah, so I mean, you'll have to, if you see the whole pyramid of schools,
Hmm.
uh, even IB schools. I mean, I was in touch with an IB school as recent as day before yesterday, and they too are having challenges in terms of online education, and it's a large IB school outside India. So I mean, they too have their own challenges in some terms of how teachers, but they are better equipped. I would say all the IB schools plus the grade A schools, which have already given laptop to their teachers, they are much better equipped because they have they have continued to invest in digital education over the years, and their teachers are used to making presentations and worksheets for the students. So uh, there are schools, but that's a handful of 2 to 3%. The second level of schools are probably trying to figure out how to do online classes through Zoom and stuff. So we have been supporting most of these schools because a lot of these schools are our customers. We've given ebooks to about almost 4 to 5,000 schools across. We've given 2 chapters or 3 chapters or whatever they required. We've been supporting them. We've conducted almost 60 training sessions across our group with almost 10 to 12,000 teachers, equipping them how to teach online, what to take care of in terms of online education. So that engagement continues, and we see that's going to benefit us in the future years because that's what we are building right now. Uh, a lot of publishers are also providing lesson plans and presentations to the
Hmm.
teachers because every teacher may not be equipped to you know create these kind of presentations. So all that is also happening, and ultimately, of course, the online teaching tool, because we don't know after July whether full school will happen or not, and it's probably going to be 50-50 or 30-70 or whatever is going to happen. Schools have to be equipped with an online education tool where they can continue to show the content online also, and continue to teach online also. So
Right.
where
Yeah, go on.
So, I mean, in terms of it's going to be a blended solution where some kids will be learning from home, some will be learning from school, and that is something that you have to enable the school with. And it's not going to be great technology, but something simple which teachers can easily use over the next 9 to 12 months, because this is going to be a challenging time for all of them.
Right. And with this sort of, Estran has been exporting to other countries across Asia, Middle East, and Africa. Where would you actually rate the Indian education system if you have to compare to other parts of the world where Estran is associated with? And do you think, with regards to the digital side of education, we have lots to catch up on?
Not really. I mean, we have the largest ed tech of the world in India. So Byju's is an Indian company, and
Hmm.
we are proud to be. So I mean, if you look at that, a lot of startups, ed tech in India would have almost 2,000 startups across, and all of them offering differentiated service. You've got very large companies also coming into India, whether in the higher education space. So I think India is placed right at the top, and it's only about the adoption of
Hmm.
both technology and the process. Maybe curriculum needs to change more in terms of making students job ready as compared to the other country. That's probably the only place where we are lacking, and I think so the new education policy is going to address that. So once that issue is addressed, I think skilling the teachers and professors to deliver that kind of curriculum is going to be the next initiative that's going to be done, and post that, of course, we will be on par with the world.
Right. So, Saurabh, what are the kind of boards that we are targeting specifically for digital? Because we are catering to ICSE as well as CBSE boards. So, why can't we charge premium on the digital offerings? That's a question coming in from someone who's watching the show.
So we are charging premium. Of course, we are. So we have to have a balanced approach. I mean, education is something that we feel should be affordable across. It should be available to the masses. Uh, as Chand, we have been very conscious about keeping costs limited so that you have a larger base of customers who can see it and use it. That is why LearnFlix is probably the most affordable learning app as on today. So while premium is important, but again, premium for a limited few is not really warranted. It has to go down to the masses. So that is probably the way forward for us, and we would want it to spread across the breadth of the country rather than make it so premium that people are unable to afford it.
Right. So, with regards to LearnFlix as well, how many downloads that we already have right now, which could be paid? And secondly, with regards to Milestone as well, how many institutions that we are already associated with?
In terms of LearnFlix, at present we are at about 70,000 downloads, and I think a quarter of them are already paying customers.
Mm.
And in terms of Milestone, as I told you, it's gone to 150,000 students, so it's across about 600 or to 700 schools.
Right. Another question, Saurabh, that's coming in is with regards to our competition in the digital as well as publishing space. What would our market share be in individual spaces?
In terms of CBSE, the last we worked on, we were at about 12 to 13% in terms of our print publishing. And in terms of regional publishing, Chaya has a advantage. It's probably about 35 to 40% of the market in West Bengal. So I mean, we're not there in ICSE again. I think so. We would be a larger. We would have about a 22%.
Right, and on the digital side.
Digital side presently we're very small. I mean, you can't even compare us to any of the large. But we got a lot of catching up to do, and I think with the new initiatives, again, because of the keeping it affordable, it may not be that large, but again, I think we'll make a difference.
Right. And another question coming in is, when can S-Chand become EBITDA positive, and what will drive that?
So S-Chand was always a bit in terms of digital, or only specifically as a whole?
I think this is specifically as a whole. That's the question coming in.
S-Chand was always a bit positive, to be honest. Last couple of years have been. I mean, we were supposed to be EBITDA positive this year also. The impact of COVID has taken away most of that. But definitely, I mean, coming year, we would definitely be EBITDA and PAT positive.
Right. And sort of, what are the kind of normalized margins we could expect in the digital side of business if you have to compare them to the publishing side?
So, I mean, if you look forward and look at just digital content going, and considering you already have the content repository with you, to monetize it, I mean, you're looking at larger margins because there's no production cost in terms of paper or printing or distribution costs. It's going to be very, very high once it plays out. I mean, ebooks, probably the margins will be as high as 60 to 70%. And again, if you're dependent upon a partner for distribution like Google or Amazon, then of course the margins. But once you're large enough, you probably have your own platform to distribute, which is what we are working on.
Right. And so far, what's been the kind of investment that S-Chand has made on the digital side of business?
So I'll break that up into two. We've got two sets of investments. One is in in-house initiative, which will be about 110 crores, and the other is where we've thought that we do not have the capacity to build. We've invested in about 5 to 6 startups And out of those 5 to 6 startups, I think so 3 of them are doing exceedingly well. So there's a testing platform called Testbook, which is already one of the largest in terms of testing for government exams in India. They've done well. They've raised multiple rounds after we've invested. Then there's a STEM company called Smartivity Labs, uh, which we funded as an angel, and that has also done exceedingly well. They're into your DIY kits and STEM learning. And of course, Edutor Technologies, which sits on the LMS platform, which now has started getting a lot of traction for us. So I think so. It was an early investor into LMS, but again, the LMS market was not that open. But with COVID-19, the LMS market is looking very, very attractive at this point of time. They're getting a lot of inquiries from across sectors.
Right. And with this overall, what's the plan with regards to reaching tier 2, tier 3 cities as well with the digital side of business?
So we are already there in tier 2, tier 3 cities. To be
Correct.
honest, our reach in tier 2, tier 3 cities is better than probably metros, because that's where most of our print publishing customers are also. So our printed books have a better distribution in smaller cities as compared to metros.
Right. But are they yeah, so are they adopting digital education as openly?
They, in fact, are adopting digital education probably faster than at least tier 2 cities are adopting it even faster than probably tier 1 cities, because again, tier 1 cities, especially the larger schools, are know all. I mean, they probably feel that they already are far ahead in terms of digital
Mm.
education. So again, sometimes they are very, very fussy in terms of adopting, but we've seen tier 2, tier 3 are very flexible. They want to do new things. And even if you look at the smart class model, which was there in the early part of the decade, that again, the adoptions in tier 2 cities was faster.
Right. And sort of, for S-Chand, always we've noticed that the B2B side of business has always been the strength, whereas the presence has not been that strong if you have to see B2C. Now, how do you, with investments coming in on the digital side of business where you are looking to expand B2C as well, how do you think will you be able to even grab that kind of market share, for example, from a Baiju's as well? Because again, the kind of focus Baiju's has is mainly on a B2C basis, and their pricing has been premium, and we're looking at affordable pricing. So do you think we will be able to bridge that gap with affordable housing and be able to garner those kind of volumes to get market share?
B2C is not really, to be honest, too much of a focus right now. Our B2C will be limited to
Hmm.
digital marketing and promoting it through our existing products. We are not going to be very aggressive because that requires a lot of capital, which we don't think is the requirement, because ultimately that capital gets built into the cost of the product, and then it makes the product unaffordable. So we would continue to we're getting very good reviews in terms of LearnFlix from students across India, and we feel with our known brand name, which has been there for last 8 decades, and also our B2B distribution setup that we have, we will be, ultimately get known as a affordable app which has good quality content at an affordable price. So I think word of mouth and some digital marketing is something that we are looking at B2C. Beyond that, uh, we're really not looking at big ticket investment in terms of marketing.
Right.
We, I mean, to be honest, we feel that's not required for our product.
Right. And with this overall, earlier as well, when we've spoken to Westran, the clear picture that we've always got is that the focus is going to be to increase the print business, as well as consolidation of the companies is something that has been a focus. But now that the focus is moving to digital, do you think there will be a shift in strategy?
So we are, yes, we have looked at blended learning, and blended learning is going to be real for all of us. Uh, if you even look at the print business over the last 4 5 years, there are all the new books developed, and even the old existing running books, all of them already had a digital initiative embedded into it, whether it was a QR code through the app which was getting scanned, and people would get additional data, or web support to teachers. So there's a lot of digital that was already flowing into the print business also. Ultimately, I mean, if and when these we've got all of our titles already on digital, we already have ebooks for almost 80% of our products, which we are already marketing through our microsites. So yes, the shift internally into digital is definitely there, but we don't see that happening on the curriculum side. We don't see that happening so quickly as uh, because again, tier 2, tier 3 cities, the adoption for I mean, how many people really have laptops and smartphones? And I mean, when to study on a phone, you can give your examinations on a phone, you can give objective type answers, but if you have to really read text on a phone, that's not. I mean, it's challenging. It's not that easy to focus on a smaller screen. And I mean, most of the penetration in to the lower level is on mobile screen, and mobile screens are limited in a family. So we feel both things will continue to be around. Physical books have their own set of advantages, uh, and digital has its own set of advantages in terms of usability across locations. So it has to be a blended approach, and that is what I mean. We've seen so many seminars, and we've spoken to so many educationists across, and everybody talks about a blended approach, because the physical contact in terms of teaching in schools and colleges, we don't see that going away that quickly. And imagine having a class full of mobile phones is going to be absolutely nobody will be concentrating on what they're supposed to be doing.
Right. And very lastly, sort of another question is with regards to where the top line ambition is of S-Chand over the next 5 years. Do you think 1,000 crore worth of revenue is something that we could see by FY25? And if yes, what would be the share of digital education in this pie?
Uh, okay, I mean, in terms of numbers, that may be a number, but we are looking at quality sales. We are looking at having consistent positive cash flows, consistent positive profits, distribution of dividend to our investors. So beyond that, we're not targeting a top line number as such, to be honest, but we would rather focus on the quality of sales that we do. And apart from that, of course, in terms of digital, we do see the digital moving up in terms of at least to 20 to 25% of our revenues in at least 2 years time.
Right. So can we see a 30 to 35% CAGR growth that we had seen between, say, FY12 to 18? Will that CAGR growth be maintained?
No, I feel that's, I mean, at that point of time, it was more driven by acquisitions. It was more, and I mean, considering the times that we are in, price increases and all also going to be very limited. So I don't see a 30 to 35% CAGR growth. But yeah, I mean, our target is to be more sustainable, and that should be around anywhere between 10 and 20%.
Right.
And what with the new education policy, of course, it may be slightly higher once it comes, because that will give a big shift in terms of new content and new books going out to the market. And of course, with the NEP, what advantage digital would have is that you can easily transition your customers even during the year in terms of new content. So that's one thing that is very exciting.
Right. So any fund infusion plans in terms of business right now and fundraising? And secondly, any acquisition plans on the anvil to further strengthen business?
Not on the acquisitions. We may look at some investments on edtech at some point of time, which is more strategic in nature. Uh, Capital raising for the core business, not really. Capital raising for the digital business, yes, we probably look at something once we are large enough and have something large enough to offer to investors. And that is something that we are working on. It's getting to that level where we are making a difference. And I think maybe 6 to 8 months down the line, we should be there.
Right. So thanks a lot, Saurabh. Thank you for joining in on the show. Great insights that we've picked up for the system and the kind of changes in trend, because I think this was a phase where digital education, there was a lot of hesitance that was coming from parents as well with regards to exposing the children to kids. And now I think because they have no option, they have been adaptable to the digital side of system way faster. So I think the sector as a whole has moved little more, it has moved ahead a little more faster than what everyone envisaged, right?
Yeah, so even I would not, I would go one step ahead and say, even for schools who are not looking at technology and were saying, okay, we will look at it maybe 6 months down the line.
Correct.
Those are the kind of schools that are actually calling back and saying, please help us to transition onto this technology, because they don't have an option as of now. So
Correct.
yes, the adoption of technology will definitely increase over the next 6 to 8 months.
Right, and I think India as a country as well, the reforms which have been taken place have always come in at the time of crisis, and I think that's what all the systems are also adopting from here on. But good, it is for the better. Thank you so much for joining in. We will come back to you as well once things progress. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as well. Stay safe, from Nirmal Bang. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.